Well, at our backstage show a week ago, where we talk about the topics for the upcoming week, Scott decided to pitch a show about a movie, which seemed a little superfluous to me, but it turned into a cute little episode called Hollywood Can Still Make Good Movies, and it was about a show called The Greatest Showman. So for my show today, I'd like to talk about a movie called The Greatest Showman. Based on Scott's recommendation, I went to see it last night. And there are bigger issues here, but before I go into them, I would like to say that I think anybody with a heart and a soul coming out of that movie feels, as I do, a moral obligation to make as many people see this film in a theater as possible. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of this film, the director and Hugh Jackman, the star, just sat there and said, "Thank you for coming to the movie theater." I'm not going to go into the film details because they are just... You come out, as we talked about last week, you come out a better person. You come out with a sense of you just got a vitamin shot for a disease that you didn't know you had. Yeah. But you just know you feel much, much, much better about everything. And you want to just go out and hug your wife and spend time with your kids and go out and take a risk and start a company, all the rest of it. But what I do want to talk about today is the power of the picture. And the absolute inability, I think, on our side to be able to do anything with this. Scott, let's start with you. Needless to say, I don't have to tell you about the effect that movie had on me, but there is so much emotion in music, dance, color, song, performance, motion, editing, all of it. It makes standing in front of a burning lake of fire, talking about the facts of this or the facts of that. It's stone knives and bearskins compared to this transporter technology. That is, the ability to make a film like that is in fact politically neutral. It depends on what you're trying to say. I thought this Greatest Showman movie was extremely positive and had positive things to say, but that same power is used negatively as well. What do you think about the fact that we do not, conservatives and Republicans do not understand, will not understand, are determined to walk away from the idea that something like that, which proceeds directly to your brainstem, is worth more than all of the National Review papers and all of the position papers, the Heritage Foundation, and all the Prager videos and all the rest of the stuff that we do? Something like that trumps all of it. It just goes straight to the heart, and it owns you in a way that we just, very few of us anyway, seem to understand.
But let me just say it this way. I regret that after almost a decade, this is still a talk show. I think, this really should be a music video. It should be a sitcom. It should be a drama. It should be something. Because in a sense, while I think what we do here is necessary and maybe until we, make the transition to that world where we really can bypass the whatever, if I had been paying attention in science class, I could have told you whether it was the amygdala or whatever. But, it's gonna bypass that filtering part of the brain that tries to reason out and logic out everything and just connects with the lizard brain that says, go. And that was actually my one word review on Facebook of The Greatest Showman was go. And I think we have yet to grasp fully, and by we I mean you, me, and Steve, but I also mean the larger movement. I think we know it intellectually. I think we have figured that out, but we haven't figured out what yet to do with it. I mentioned during our backstage episode that only members can see at BillWhittle.com that I was watching an episode of Quantico last night. And at the end of the episode, I suddenly realized that this drama that I had gotten caught up into, which seemed like a really kind of cool conservative thing, they were fighting terrorists and technology was involved and, they averted this disaster and all this kind of stuff. The whole show was really an anti-human convention of the states, a constitutional amending process show. That was like the whole reason why the script was written, so that they could say that it would be a really bad idea to do a convention of the states. And I got up from the chair that I was sitting in, and I said that to my wife, and I said, they're beating us every night. And until we realize that they're beating us every night this way and find a way to do what, frankly, we love. I mean, I think 3 out of 3 of us here much prefer the drama and humor and music, and Steve Green has the biggest collection of movies of any human on earth. So I think it comes naturally to us, and now we just need to make that leap to hyperspace where we actually get into doing it, not just talking about it.
That would be nice. Steve, again, the only work that I'm disparaging here is our own. But I've never seen a Firewall or a Ben Shapiro podcast or a Prager University lesson that made me want to sit down with my wife and apologize for all of my many shortcomings over the course of our brief time together in the way that this movie did. Because it is moving you on some profoundly deep level. I want to just take a minute to show you guys something that I talked about quite a bit a couple years ago and not so much lately, and I won't take much time with it. But I flew Virgin America to Florida. They used to have a very funny safety video. They had a new one. It looked like a musical. I reluctantly watched it on the way back from Florida. I saw it again. And as soon as I got out of the car in LAX, I went home and I fired up the computer and I watched it online on YouTube about 5 or 6 times. It was just that dynamic. And the reason I liked it so much was because I realized that this video is taking the most boring information on the earth, and it's information I've heard 300 times. And they're making it so compelling that I just can't stop watching it. So just 2 little clips, and then I'll get your take on it. Here's just a little segment that they do on how to put on your life vest.
Under your seat, there's a life vest. First class, it's below your center armrest. Remove the pouch, tear it open, place it over your head. Are we coming in clear? Did you hear what we said? Buckle the white straps and tighten right around your waist. Once off the plane, pull the handles and your vest will inflate. If your vest doesn't feel, honey, no big deal. Blow into the red tube and you got a refill. There's a bright locator light and it's right on your shoulder. Thank you for your attention. This robot rap is over.
There's a bright locator light and it's over your shoulder. Thank you for this attention. Your robot rap is over. Okay. And then finally, and this goes to the point, I think, of the Greatest Showman. At the very end of the video, when they're just wrapping the thing up, the tone comes down and the lights get darker and everything seems to be coming down. And then this explosion of joy. And this is really the guts of it, Steve. So let me just run this for you real quick. Watch how and listen to how this whole thing is just coming down off of this high, and then look at the exuberance on the faces of these people and how much fun they're having. And tell me you don't want to fly on this airline.
Thank you for flying Virgin America.
So tonight, we're gonna fly. Live it on up in the sky. Virgin America knows all the places you wanna be. Fly away with me. Fly away with me tonight. If you're ready to fly, 'cause we're gonna live it on up in the sky. Virgin America knows all the places you wanna be. Fly away with me. Fly away with me, yeah.
So all I'm trying to say here, guys, is this: if I had a hunk of money, I would do a musical about conservatism, and just like the safety video covers 4 or 5 topics, I just keep it real simple, and I would make it punch like that. Steve, this is the kind of messaging that has destroyed America in terms of the power of it. And why is it, do you think, that we just, not only do we not use it, we disdain it and we scorn it, we want nothing to do with it, we don't put any money into it. What is it about this sense of using emotion that makes so many conservatives absolutely clueless and unwilling to pick up Excalibur, which sits at our feet, having been tossed to us by the Lady of the Lake? We decide to just lay it on the grass and go in there with our, with our penknife and our steel rimmed spectacles.
I'm not so sure it's that we can't. It's that we have seen that the other side owns that field, that they own that playing ground, and so we've decided, well, since we can't play their game, we're going to play our game instead, and our game tends to be, I don't want to sound all highfalutin or anything, but our game is more intellectual and reason-based. It's also a lot less effective. So clearly, this decision by those of us on the right, or maybe not decision by some of us, but this kind of tradition that's been handed down to us over the last 30, 40, 50 years, we need to get out of that. What we need to remember is the best stories are the human stories. The really human dramas. Hollywood, for all of its good storytelling, also tends to fall into what I call the escalating situation trap. The first season of 24 was one of the best things I'd ever seen on TV. So it was a very small-scale drama. You've got a bad guy who wants to break out another bad guy from prison, and the anti-terrorist guy has 24 hours split up into 24 episodes in which to stop them, and it's all in real time. Very human drama, small-level stuff. The hero's allowed to be weak. He starts dozing off in the middle of the show because he's been up for 15 hours or whatever. And the worst thing that happens is, spoiler alert, his wife is killed at the end, and it's just horrible because they've been together through this day of just absolute hell. Small, human, relatable stakes. Very next season, boom, a nuke goes off in Los Angeles, and the superhero version of Jack Bauer now springs into action and never falls asleep or really suffers, and that's that escalating stakes. You lose the human element, and Hollywood does this all the time. Wonder Woman was 2/3 of a great superhero movie. The last third was just another CGI fest, and it's just. And so that's what we need to do. We don't have to do $1 million musical, Bill. And anybody who wants Right Angle the musical, I suggest, has never heard me sing or watched me dance. So
we'll fix it in post.
Let's maybe set that aside. But if we can tell, and Scott is the genius of this, if we can tell these small, human, relatable stories, we don't need the huge musical number or the nuke going off outside of Los Angeles. We just need to tell a good story.
Many times I've done hundreds of speaking engagements, and it's almost always somebody comes up to me afterwards and says, "Why don't we make conservative movies or maybe conservative video games?" And normally I'm more polite, but what I'm actually thinking is, let's make a conservative video game where you go to the bank and you politely deposit more money than you take out, and then you drive home again.
This is why we lose,
and have dinner with your wife and kids. And that's a cynical approach because it's not how it works. We learn through stories. The Bible is stories. All that we learn through stories. All of our morality we learn through stories. And story is by nature conservative in the term of conservative in what we mean in terms of modern terms. Storytelling is about an individual, and it's about an individual battling external and internal demons. And for the story to be an effective story, somebody who you start out liking has to go someplace very dark, and you have to think maybe this person isn't the person I thought he was. And this is exactly the story of The Greatest Showman and all the great stories. And then they have a moment of crisis, and then we find out what kind of a person they are. In a down ending, they fail the test. In an up ending, they pass the test. This is how we think. It's not just a subset of our experience. The culture is not a subset of the political war. It's the ocean that we all swim in, and we simply refuse to do it. Absolutely refuse to do it. Go watch that movie if you can, and tell me you're not moved by it, and tell me that you wouldn't do anything that Hugh Jackman and Zac Efron and so on are not suggesting you do. They don't give you instructions. People ask me why I live out here. I live out here because of this reason. When I come out of a movie like this, I realize that the tools that I have as a commentator working with my great and brilliant friends here are so limited. to standing there in first person in a flat image when in point of fact, with the resources, we would have music and we'd have choreography, we'd have camera moves, we'd have edit, we'd have villains, we'd have dialogue, we would have impact, sound effects, we would have all of the things that the left has at their disposal, and we are fighting this fight with both hands tied behind our backs, with a blindfold on, with our legs shackled to each other, and somehow it's still a 50-50 country. Can we just do a little of this, please? You know the guy who can help. We're going to get into the video game situation this year. So if you want to help us, we could certainly use the support to go out there and save the country using techniques that are known to work. Go see The Greatest Showman and then decide whether you want to become a member of a company that's trying to do something like that anyway. For all of us here at BillWhittle.com, thank you very much for joining us. It's a great beginning to a great year. And we will see you all next week.